Hi everyone, Katie Sutton here, intuitive channel and founder of Zen Within Academy, coming to you to share your June energy update. We have a few important themes this month. The first is all about truly embodying the divine feminine, and the second is about the anchoring of the divine masculine. The third is the re-emergence of trauma, and the fourth is all about freedom of self-expression. So stay tuned for the rest of the energy update. Hi there. So I hope everyone is doing well as we're beginning to re-enter our new normal post-pandemic. I know that many of you have had a great deal of change that you've experienced over the last several months, and you're looking for some brighter energy to come in as we step into the summer. And one of the things that will be happening for us as we move into the month of June is that the energies that we experienced during the pandemic, which are really a preview of that fifth dimensional frequency, they will continue to be anchored as we move into June. Many of you will be called to step back into jobs, back into other ways of being that maybe no longer fit. And so we will start to see an emergence of an understanding of where we truly want to align with what I call the divine feminine frequency of fifth dimensional consciousness. This means that we will start to realize the parts of our lives that we perhaps had prior to the pandemic that no longer fit post-pandemic. For many of you, that means that there's going to be a desire to have less busy and do less tasks in a short period of time. We really want to begin to anchor truly this divine feminine frequency that we were able to experience during the pandemic. And that means that we might need to make some changes. And so in June, we will start to see the anchoring of this divine feminine to a greater degree in each of our individual lives. And it will show up differently for each of us. And that takes me to my second theme, which is a preview of the divine masculine frequency that we are to maintain going forward. So some of you that have been following me for a while know that I talk a lot about consciousness and a lot about frequency shift. Well, what's happening as we're moving from this third dimensional collective reality into 5D is that the way that we've been in the wounded masculine for so many years is starting to fall. And we've already started to see some of the constructs that have been created in that wounded masculine frequency, that efforting, that busy, that control structure beginning to fall away. And so in the month of June, we're going to, on an individual level, start to begin to have a relationship with the divine masculine. Well, what does that mean practically in our lives? It looks like us starting to understand how to care for our physical bodies in new ways, starting to create boundaries and structure in our life, and actually starting to be able to say no when we mean it. Right? So many of you have been in people-pleasing mode for a really long time. I know that's something that I've been working with as well. And as we step into this divine masculine frequency, one of the things that's going to be activated is any trauma that we haven't dealt with around setting boundaries and saying no. And so throughout the month of June, you're going to be presented with lots of different opportunities to either re-engage with an old way of being in the wounded masculine, in the busy, in the effort, in the control structure, or engage in a new way in a divine masculine where you stand firmly in your truth. And so we will start to see as well in June the weaving together of the divine masculine and the divine feminine frequencies in the fifth dimensional consciousness. What that means as these two energies come together is that we're all going to start to create a different reality for ourselves based on that individual balanced divine masculine and feminine frequency for each of us. So really practically, that might mean that the way that you choose to show up going forward is very different than the way that you would have chosen to show up prior to this pandemic. And each of us will have a varying degree of shifts depending on how much of the fifth dimensional consciousness we were already participating in prior to this pandemic. And so that will continue to evolve over the months of June. And what you might find is an interweaving and an up and down frequency of these two divine feminine, divine masculine ways of being. And so one day you might feel really in the flow of just being, and another day you might feel very much in the need to be and busy and to create and to do and complete things on your task list. And it may be difficult for you to find a balance of those two things in any given day. So throughout the month of June, look for the cycles. Pay attention to the cycles and honor them as best you can. The third theme that I want to talk about is the re-emergence of trauma. So I'm starting to see this already ahead of the 2 eclipses that we have in June. I have clients coming in to give me a preview of what we're going to be working with in June, which is a re-emergence of deeply held trauma in the body. For some of us, that is trauma from other lifetimes where we've been on the ascension path and haven't completed it successfully according to our hopes and desires. So many of us have had lifetimes in Atlantis and Lemuria where the consciousness was raised and then it fell. And we have a lot of sense of responsibility for getting it right this time. And so we hold trauma in our body, not just from this lifetime, but from many, many, many lifetimes. And so we will be doing a lot of processing within the physical body. So there's going to be a lot of talk of embodiment and getting back into the physical body and pulling into the physical body again, because for the last couple of months, we've kind of been a bit disassociated as we've moved through this trauma. And one of the ways that we start to activate this trauma is when we get pushed into busy and we're not quite ready to re-engage with our lives in the way that we were before, and we get pushed into it. You're going to see explosions, surprises, big things that happen in your life where you're like, whoa, I just can't handle that anymore. And so this re-emergence of trauma might take the form of some physicality stuff, some pain in the body. It may also look like explosions of anger and having to speak your truth in a really volatile way. And that takes me into our 4th theme. And this is the most important theme, and this is the one that I'll be focused on in my healing circle this month, which is the anchoring of our truth in terms of verbal expression and self-expression. And so many of us have started to see increased polarity in social media, in the news, as we are going into these debates about things like vaccines and masks and all kinds of other issues that are at the forefront. You're starting to see people, for the very first time perhaps, express their deepest truths. That is going to continue to expand. When we enter this eclipse corridor in June, I think the first one is June 5th, and then we have one around the solstice time. When we enter this eclipse corridor, you're going to see some deeper truths revealed and some surprises. We're going to see that on a global scale, but you're also going to likely experience that in your life. And so it's going to be really, really important that we're very in tune with our throat chakra, that we're doing some work with our throat, with verbal expression, including journaling as well, because that's going to allow you to get really clear on what your truth is, which is setting us up for the energies coming in July and August, where we're going to be asked to trust at a deeper level. And so last month we saw a lot of desire to drop into surrender and to release any fear of uncertainty that we had. This month we're anchoring back into ourselves so that we can come into what our truth is. And very practically, that looks like how you're going to re-engage in the rule system that's been developed in your individual states and communities in terms of how you're supposed to engage with the world related to your pandemic experience. So will you choose to wear a mask? Will you not? Will you choose to wear gloves when you go out and and engage with the world? Will you go and get your hair cut, or will you not, right? So each of us has to decide our own truth and then verbally express those boundaries to those that we love. Because likely not everybody in your household or your family is going to be on the same page. Everybody has a different risk tolerance. So being able to communicate what your truth is while also feeling comfortable to allow others to have their own freedom of self-expression is going to be very key. We're going to see a lot of work on an individual level about releasing anywhere where we're not integrity, including not integrity with being in our truth ourselves and realizing what our truths are. So a lot of work this month. These eclipses are going to change things. We're going to see, like I said, some surprises coming in, some new revelations. I think there's a lot of positivity with that. And in general, I see that our summer months are about us re-engaging with ourselves, with the world around us, getting outside, being in the sun. It is time for us to enjoy life again. And so whatever that looks like for you, honor it, right? Be in that freedom of self-expression of whatever your joy is. Get creative. So thank you for watching. I appreciate you all being here and tuning into these monthly updates. I really enjoy gathering this information from the ethers and bringing it to all of you. And I've really been enjoying receiving your feedback about how these themes resonate. So as I mentioned in my June healing circle, we'll be working on that freedom of self-expression through the throat chakra. This is such an important piece because our throat is all about sovereignty and freedom, and that is what we are moving into as a collective. It may not feel like it right now. It may feel like we have so many controls coming in place, but that is all changing. The duality has to get stronger before we can come back together in unity. So I hope you'll join me. That'll be on June 17th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. I'll put some information about that in the show notes. I also have several retreats coming up, one in July, one in August, and another in August actually in Mount Shasta. There's a few spaces left in each of those if you feel called to join us. The first two are in Flat Rock, North Carolina, and the other one will be in Mount Shasta, California. And it's time for us to do this deep work together and come back together in community. I keep hearing that very clearly, and I'm hearing it from those around me. So don't be afraid. Join us. So thank you for watching and have a wonderful June.